Hi, this is Michael Haynes. I recently conducted a training and presentation on helping chapters of the Association for Talent and Development develop so that they will identify and tackle issues that risk their chapter's sustainability in the long term. Was geared towards training professionals and their membership-based volunteer organizations. But really, this training will work for anybody that has to deal with an organization like a fraternity or a charitable organization, a professional organization, anything that has members that sustain the organization and volunteer board members. So not a business necessarily, but it can apply to pretty much any kind of organization. But this is really focused on volunteer organizations and the leaders to help think about how they can long-term develop the organization by doing stuff today. So this is the faster version. This was done in a room with about 80 people with some interaction and some discussions. So it's going to be a little different for this one, but I wanted everybody to be able to see kind of what I did in that training, and that we hopefully we can share this so that everybody can benefit from it. So there'll be times in this where if you have the worksheet that I've also posted on my website, at the link below as well, if you have that worksheet, you can pause the video, take some notes, think about it, and go from there. But again, this was made for the Association for Talent Development and its chapter leaders. So there may be some things that are kind of different, don't apply to your organization, but I'm sure there's something here that you can glean to help develop. So let's get started. So I come from the Motor City, Detroit, where we have such great organizations as Ford, GM, Kellogg's, University of Michigan, and Dow Chemical. Those are all Michigan-based organizations. And so think to yourself, like, what do all these have in common? What do all these organizations have in common? And that's that they've been around for over 100 years. So think, when I did this in the room, I asked the question, raise your hand if you think your organization should be around here, if you want your organization to be around in 100 years. Naturally, all the hands go up. So you want your organization to be able to sustain itself for the next 100 years, right? Just like all these organizations have done. So some of the things we'll talk about today will kind of help lead your organization in the long term, but it's all stuff that you can do today to help. So when I went through the training, we're going to identify some threats. There's a knowledge share component, which if you're doing this with a group of people, you're able to discuss and share. But you are going to have an action plan by the end of this time if you pause the video and do some worksheet, some writing in the worksheet. So let's move ahead. All right. So when we're in our organizations and we're thinking about the events that we're doing, or we're looking at membership recruitment jobs or finance assessments, whatever we're doing, we're always looking at it in a sprint. We want to get to the end of that project, complete it, be successful, and then take a break. All right, just like a sprint. But our organizations need to be run more like a marathon. Long term, takes a long time. 26.2 miles. You want to think of each mile of the marathon for organizations like 1 year. We think 26 years ahead. That's why we have 3-year, 5-year strategic plans, the 10-year succession plans. We want to think of an organization as run like a marathon. So I love cheesy allegories and cheesy metaphors when I do my training. So what we're going to use for this particular training is this allegory of running a marathon. So let's pretend that we're all going to run a marathon. And I want you to think of what are some things that we need. So when I brought this up in the presentation this weekend, people said things like, we need good equipment, we need training, we need good food, we need a fitness trainer, we need to evaluate how we're doing, lots of good things like that. So what we're going to do is talk through 5 different issues that you can do to help your organization sustain itself in the long term, thinking of it like a marathon race, like we're preparing to run a marathon race. So hopefully you're ready for that. First thing is I want you to think of your bylaws and your structure of your organization, the rules that make up everything, and the positions that kind of keep the structure of the organization intact. Those are like the shoes. All right. When you're running a 26-mile marathon, if you have shoes that don't fit, you might fall, or your ankles are going to hurt, your muscles are going to hurt. It's not going to work for you. Actually, I'm a lawyer, not a science guy, so I don't know a ton, but there is such thing as everybody's foot hits the ground a different way. When you're running, your foot hits the ground, hits the road, just kind of a different way, and you need shoes that adjust that. Just like everybody's organization, their chapter, or whatever they're working on, it's going to be different. So you have to make sure that your bylaws and your structure fit your goals in your organization, just like a good pair of shoes should fit you if you're going to run a marathon. Okay, so what you need to do is you need to review your bylaws at least every 2 years. If you have a 3-year strategic plan, you better be looking at it at least every 3 years, but you probably should look at your bylaws and your structure a little bit more than that. So what are you looking for? Well, how are your board positions? Do you have too many? Do you have enough? Do the number of board positions and the roles that they serve fulfill the organization's needs? It's okay to take away roles. It's okay to add more. Create tiers. Some people use director positions and vice president positions, and some of them report to the other ones. So like with ATD, a lot of them, you have vice presidents, and then you have directors that serve underneath them, committee members under that. The larger your organization gets, the more members you get, and of course you want more. You need to think about, do we have enough people to lead this organization? On the other hand, some people have too many. You might have 15 board members for 50 members. You might only need 5 or 6. So you need to make sure that your board positions and what those positions actually do fit for what you're trying to accomplish as an organization, and leave room for growth. It's okay. Yeah, maybe you have trouble filling one of those positions, but if you're struggling to fill 2 or 3 positions a year and you have turnover, maybe you don't need those board positions as much as you think you do. Second thing is flexibility. With bylaws are to support your goals. So you need to have more permissions, not as many requirements. So what I mean by that is that your bylaws should be filled with, here's what you can do as a board. The board is allowed to do this, not the board must do this every time. What happens is if you have a lot of musts instead of cans, is that you have an organization that is stuck and rooted in what the bylaws say. You don't really get to be flexible and create growth. Right? Growth needs flexibility. So one thing is for example, is if you're a dues-based organization, is maybe not put the requirement of the exact dues amount in the bylaws. For example, if you have a $75 a year dues for membership, maybe don't put that in there. Put the board should come up with, or the board has the responsibility of agreeing or voting on the membership dues annually. So what you're doing is, instead of saying it has to be $75, you're saying the board has to decide. All right, the board can decide how much it wants to be, but it's their job to decide. So it's almost kind of a hybrid of the permission and requirement, but it leaves more flexibility for what the organization can do. The final thing here is you update your bylaws to reflect what you actually do. Are there things in your bylaws and your structure, your rules, that you don't even do anymore? You don't need them. They don't help you accomplish any goals. Are there requirements for voting that maybe isn't quite going to help you achieve anything? A lot of people have bylaws that require lots of issues to go in front of the membership. So the membership has to vote on things that maybe aren't quite as important for the membership to vote on. It's one thing that if you're going to make a huge investment in something, or spend a lot of money, or raise the costs, for example, membership dues might be something you want to put before the membership. That makes sense. But the little things like deciding which website company you're going to use, the software you're going to use, or which bank you're going to take your account to, maybe you don't need that. That's not as important to your organization structure to be in there. So you got to get rid of that. Ultimately, you want your goals to be the center and your structure to build around it, not the other way around. Your goals are central to how your organization is going to succeed and sustain itself, and the structure has to go around it, build around the goals. If you do the other way around and you try to fit your goals in the structure you have, you're going to be very limited, especially if your structure isn't working and you're not really aware of the problems. So build your structure around your goals. So pick out your goals. If you do strategic planning every year, or you adapt it every year, also look at your bylaws and see how those are handling it. Okay. Take a minute, pause the video, and I need you to think about the things. Take out that worksheet if you've got it, or just take some notes somewhere. But the first thing, just to review this, is write down at least one way that your structure or your bylaws conflict with you or your chapter's goals or vision. All right, take a minute, write that down, and then think about how can you tackle that. And ask for support around the people around you if you're watching this together. How can you eradicate this conflict? So pause the video, take a moment for that before we move on. All right. Next thing is a healthy diet. Obviously, when you're doing anything with fitness and exercise and body capabilities, a healthy diet and good intake of good food is very important, right? So, if you're trying to run a marathon, you're not necessarily wanting to eat the pizza and the donuts and things. They might sound good, they might taste good, but in the long run, it's not really helping you. I like to think of this as like the people that come into our organization. All right, you want the salads and you want the vegetables of types of people where they're the good quality people that are helping. You don't want the donuts and pizza people. As much as they might be interesting, you don't want that disruptive, low quality, harmful individual. So kind of as a hot take or a kind of something crazy to say here, we've got, I think, one involved member in your organization is better than 5 uninterested or disruptive members. All right, it's better to have one good quality member come in than the 5 people that they're just bodies and they're just names on a page. They're not helping your organization get any better. All right. So I think it's really important that we need to be looking for those high quality people. And there's 2 areas that I think we don't work as hard to recruit. The first one is students. All right. No matter what organization you are, there's probably students studying some sort of degree or program that applies to your organization. I teach at Oakland University, so I have this example here. With training, for example, there's whole master's and undergrad programs designed just to teach trainers and HR development specialists that, at least for the ATD chapters, we can reach out to those people and create partnerships. No matter what organization you have, there are students studying the stuff that you're doing. All right, if you're a labor and employment coalition or something, there's tons of HR and employment and industrial engineering type folks that you can get. If you're a social organization, there's just lots of students in any major that you can recruit from. But the students are going to be the future of the profession if you're a professional organization, and they're the future of your organization no matter what profession you're in, because they're going to be around here a lot longer than you are. It depends on how old you are, but if you get a bunch of 20-year-old students involved, and if you're in your 50s, well, they're going to take over. They're going to be the one that take over for you in the organization and lead it forward. The other one that we need to recruit is what I call field targeted. It shows a picture of hats. So we all wear different hats. All right, like I said, I'm an attorney, but I also do a lot of training. I wear 2 different hats right there. A lot of times we have skill gaps in our organization. One thing I've dealt with in the past is that we've had gaps in marketing people, that a training organization has a tough time finding good marketing people. Well, instead of continuing to kind of just recruit our same members, we should branch out and look for marketing professionals who also are trainers. So we can adapt and recruit people from organizations that have the subject matter expertise but also fit into the values and the purpose of our organization. Like I said, with marketing, and it's a training organization that I'm talking about, there are people who train that will benefit from the training professional organization that also have connections or the subject matter expertise to help us in the marketing problems that we're having. So it's very important to kind of reach out beyond your normal recruitment strategy, both the students and also towards the field. And that's going to help you increase the quality of the people. So thinking time again, pause the video here in a second just to take a few minutes to think and talk if there's people around you. But I want you to write down at least one skill or subject matter gap that your organization, your chapter in this case for the ATD, that your organization is facing. All right, write one of those things down on the worksheet in front of you. And then think about what industries or organizations may have potential members who can fill that gap. I said that we were going after marketing firms or marketing groups that have trainers who can help us fix our marketing skill gaps. But what organizations and industries in your areas can have potential members who will fill those gaps? So take a moment, write that down, and think about that. Pause the video before moving on. Now we're ready for issue number 3. So when you're running a marathon, back to our marathon allegory, you're running a marathon, you need to keep a very good steady pace. If your pace is too quick, you're going to get tired too quickly, and you might be in trouble when you're trying to finish the race. But if you're going too slowly, well, you're not going to beat your last time. You're not going to improve. You're not going to get better, and you're going to struggle to develop long term. So you need to have steady pacing. Well, in our organizations, I like to think of steady pacing as our transitions, our turnover. So I want you to think of something. Think about this. What would happen if everybody else on your board quit today? What would you do? Besides freaking out and maybe wanting to quit yourself, what would you do? Where could you find the documents that you need to keep the organization running? Do you know where your membership rosters are? Do you know people you could talk to that might have information that you could use? Do you know where you could get some new volunteers, new board members? What about financial documents, records, things that you need to keep the organization moving forward? All right. A while ago, the organization I'm part of fell apart. For one reason or another, people were less interested in the organization, and it shrank down to just a few people. Well, somebody was interested in taking on the role of president, and this is more than a decade ago, and wanting to revitalize that organization. So they were handed a box, and inside the box was everything that the organization had. All right. So what I want you to think about is what's in the box. What's in your box for your organization that if in 10 years from now somebody came to you and needed everything, they wanted to jumpstart the organization, it had died down, and you had a box for them. What would you want in the box? So this proverbial box is what we want to think about today, because if we have this box set up, no matter what happens in our organization, it'll be ready for that transition for somebody else. And it helps to think about the catastrophic, where the situations where your organizations just completely nosedive. But really, it's going to help us on our annual turnovers when we have new board members. If someone has to leave the organization prematurely, if we have this proverbial box full of stuff to help this transition, then we're going to be okay, right? No matter when that transition takes place. So what's in the box? All right, this is how I think. I think of the big three. I come from Michigan. We got the big three automotives, or we used to be the big three automotive companies. You need to think, how easy would it be to find the following things? First thing is the basic stuff, the basic documents that keep your organization afloat. Do you have any standard operating procedures on how to run things like events, the contacts? Do you have your membership rosters? Do you have your finance records? Do you know how to get to the bank where the bank that your money for the organization's even held? These are the things that you need to have easily accessible in things like a Dropbox system, Google Drive, just some accessibility so that anybody can get it when they need it, who's on the board in the future. Second thing is former board members. This is a picture of one of our former presidents who's still on the board as a member at large, but is very accessible and kind of our guru of the historical sense of our organization. So how easy is it to access former board members? Doesn't matter how far back. Do you just have records of people that you can contact to make sure that, if you have questions, or what did we do 10 years ago? What did we do a couple years ago? So keep that on hand so you're able to access. Keep them involved. A lot of chapters for ATD and a lot of organizations have president's councils where former presidents get to sit on a committee and help advise the chapter for the long term. The third thing is historical records. Any meeting minutes where decisions were made, bills for events, if you're rented a conference center, contacts for those kind of things, so that you can look at what was done the last couple of years and be able to pick up from there. So you kind of have an advisor in the documents themselves. What was done before. Okay, some options. You can use Dropbox. Trying to digitize things is the best move because it can be duplicated easily and moved around, and multiple people can have it. Another way to kind of secure things, if you have the resources, is to have a third-party administrator. You can hire companies, event planners, things like that. Those people will help control the data and the information so that they'll be around no matter how many board members go through the revolving door. So those are some options. Thinking time again. I want you to go back to that worksheet. We're on the back page now. If you have the one I created, write down one important aspect of your chapter that should be preserved and easily accessible, but currently isn't. What thing that you can do? What's one thing that you know of that you just don't think it's written down somewhere? It should be, or should be something that in a couple years will be really important. And then think about what can you do in your role to change that. So take a minute, write that down, pause the video, think about this, and then make some notes on that before you move on. All right, the fourth issue is that when you're running a marathon, you're on the road, there could be potholes, there could be hazards, people drop cups and stuff in the middle of the way, there could be a cat or a dog run across, you never know. You always got to be looking ahead. So this fourth issue is just to look ahead, keep your organization always looking ahead for threats, vulnerabilities, and you just got to be constantly aware of what could be happening. And the best way to do that is with SWOT analysis, S-W-O-T. And for those of you who have never done a SWOT analysis before, it means strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Now, strengths and weaknesses are internal. What is your organization and what are you doing that affects either your strengths or your weaknesses. On the other side, opportunities and threats are external. What are the things around you, outside of your control that are either an opportunity for you to do something to take advantage of, or a threat to your success and your sustainability? And so what you need to do is you need to conduct a SWOT analysis on your whole chapter, your organization as a whole, preferably with other board members, kind of in a strategic session. And you also need to do, probably before you do the SWOT analysis of your organization, you do a SWOT of just your job, your role on the board. So for example, my job with ATD in Detroit is that I'm the vice president of membership. So I would do one about just membership issues with the chapter. So for example, a strength we have is that our member-to-member program, which is members recruiting other new members, and they get an incentive through a free event for it, has been pretty successful. So one of our strengths is we can get our members to recruit new members. Right? It's something we do internally. But a weakness, we have an initiation fee, and it's possible that it's turned away some new members that we didn't get. So one of our weaknesses internal is we have a fee that maybe we shouldn't offer. Opportunities, again, those are external. We have lots of potential members that work and live geographically between Detroit, which is my organization, and Ann Arbor, where there's another organization. So that threat, threat just means it's something to think about, a conflict, a concern. It doesn't have to be threat like intentional or menacing or any kind of, there's no feeling behind it. It just is what it is. Well, one of the threats is that, Ann Arbor wants to recruit too, right? Of course we want to recruit. Everybody wants to recruit. But if we're going to overstep our bounds or step on each other's toes, that's kind of a conflict. Both of our organizations want to collaborate, not compete. So I'm looking at threats to membership, opportunities membership, strengths and weaknesses that have to do with internal membership issues. I'm looking at my role and assessing that with the SWOT. And then, of course, I'll take that to the board and do a larger SWOT analysis of the chapter with them in tandem. And what you do with this, why would we do this? When you're doing your strategic plan, your strategic goals, or your objectives for the next year, take the weaknesses and the threats and make goals that address those. So, for example, for 2018, I might make a goal that says I need to assess the initiation fee and determine whether or not it's actually harmful to us or not, and then act on that. Or for the threat, I need to make sure we're collaborating. One of our goals can be creating a plan to collaborate in recruitment with Ann Arbor so that we're not stepping on each other's toes. So when you're looking ahead and you do your SWOT analysis, act on the weaknesses and the threats, because if your strengths and opportunities, you're already looking at the positives, you're already doing what's good, what you're good at. Just keep doing that. But make goals and make strides to tackle the weaknesses and the threats. So with that, I need you to think for a minute here. Use that. The worksheet has a little SWOT breakdown for you to use. But I want you to for right now, write down one weakness and one threat that faces your current role in the organization. All right, and then think about how can your strategic goals for next year address these issues. All right, take a quick minute, pause the video, and then once you've done that, then go ahead and move on. So now that you've done the SWOT analysis and you've done a couple weaknesses and threats, tonight or tomorrow, whenever you get a chance, definitely take a moment, finish that SWOT analysis, do at least 3 or 4 of each of the SWOTs, and then really think about how you're going to make your strategic goals for next year based on that, or change the ones you have now. Our final thing with our marathon metaphor is that when you're a runner or you're any kind of sport athlete, you're always wanting to get better. You want to make your times better. You're going to track what you did last marathon, try to get better, try to get stronger, more fit, and just do better. Well, as trainers, my industry, that's all we do. We want to just get better and better and better. We want to make our participants and our trainings better. We want to make just always be improving, right? So we need to do the same thing in our organizations. And a lot of times we do a lot of good job doing surveys and collecting feedback, but we don't always act on it. We might act on it if it personally affects us. So if I give a presentation or do a facilitated training, I'm probably going to take some of the feedback to heart and maybe change some things for myself. But for our organizations, we receive feedback all the time, and maybe we don't quite take it to heart or make any changes. So what you need to do is actually act on your evaluations. So don't let things fall apart in the future because of something you could have fixed now. Often when organizations fail or decline, at least, usually you can tie it to something you already knew was going to happen and someone just didn't address it. So when you're doing evaluations, either from events or just general feedback, make sure you're actually reviewing and acting on the feedback. And that's going to help you solve problems in the long run. All right, it's not even asking you to do any extra work. It's just saying, here's what we know we need to work on, so let's address it. Okay, you're already getting the feedback, just use it. All right, now that we've talked about these 5 steps, it's time for action. All right, you see on the bottom of the worksheet, you'll see this action plan section. All right, this is for you to put one action step down that you're going to take from this session, what we just talked about, and you're going to apply to your organization. Obviously, you can do more than one if you want, but just take one thing that you wrote down, or one thing that you got from the session, and I want you to write it down. This is, I will implement the following action items to improve my chapter or organization's sustainability. What are you going to do? Pause the video, take a quick minute, write that down. All right, now that you've written that down, take that with you, figure out how you're going to address that, put it in your strategic plan, whatever it takes for you to implement that, because in the long run, that's going to help your organization sustain itself. It's going to make the organization stronger and better, and this is the start of it. Okay, once you've implemented this one, come back to this worksheet, come back to these analysis, you can pick another one. All right, that's how you do it. That's all you got to do, is just one step at a time, take action, implement an action, come back, reassess, and find more ways to keep your organization sustained. I'll leave you with this last quote here. Comedian Eddie Izzard last year in 2016 finished 27 marathons in 27 days, and he was sick for most of it. And he's over 50. He's in late 50s, I believe. But his quote, he says, "Your mind has to be saying, I will do this no matter what." And that applies to you, to all of you. Okay, you have to prepare your organizations for the future. No matter what, you are the one that's going to have to seek out the vulnerabilities in your organization. You're the one no matter what, that's going to have to fix these problems today so that your organization can be around in 100 years. All right, you're running the marathon by being a leader of an organization. The things you do today will have great impact on whether or not your organization is here tomorrow. All right, thank you very much for joining me in this training. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions or concerns or want to flesh out more of these. And I really appreciate your time and attention on this session. So good luck sustaining organizations, keep things moving along, and just do those things today so that you can help your organization be here tomorrow. Thanks.